Chi-Chi, it's nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
We've kind of gone full circle. I did the initial intake, and now this is an outtake.
Okay.
And what I'm interested in is to try to find out what your experience was like with the 3 therapists that you saw as a part of this program.
Okay.
And the first question that I was really wondering about, if you had some friends and they were going to start therapy, and they were trying to decide, who should I choose, Dr. Greenberg, Dr. Beck, Dr. McWilliams, how would you describe the 3 different therapists to your friend?
I would say that each of them focused on, I would say, almost a different part of your personality, and what part of that personality you feel would respond better to their approach, whether you feel that you need work on really identifying your emotions, or it would depend on. I think that's how I would sum it up.
So if you needed somebody, they wanted to work on emotions, who would you suggest they talk with?
Dr. Greenberg.
Dr. Greenberg, okay.
But each of them, as I said, each of them, I think, are really focused on a specific part of, if your problems have a lot of components to them, each of them really focused primarily on one of those components. Okay. So it was interesting in that way.
And so as you leave, having been in these 3 sessions, what are you taking away with you?
I was actually surprised at how different my response to each of them was, and how different it felt doing the therapy with each of them. Going into it, I didn't expect it to be that different. I thought it would be sort of I thought that my emotional experience of it would be similar, but it was very different.
And can you talk about the difference? I mean, you began with Dr. Greenberg, and then you went to Dr. McWilliams, and then Dr. Beck.
Right. You mean talk about how I reacted to each one?
Yeah.
With Dr. Greenberg, I really felt that there was a very strong emotional connection right away, and that it was a very safe place to really talk about anything, and to really identify emotions and make them controllable. And I thought that was, it was so focused on that, and it was so, that you wouldn't think that would be, intellectually you would think that might not, how would that be helpful? But experientially, it was, you really felt removed from everything and just very focused on that stuff. Dr. Beck I liked a lot because the idea that you could take charge of things and not ignore the emotional component, but put it aside for the moment and focus more on changing your life and taking concrete steps. It was very hopeful and very, it was very good to have that sense that you could be in control. With Dr. McWilliams,
yes.
I'm sorry. I was very impressed by her intelligence and her ability to very quickly analyze my confused emotions, and that was very helpful. I was impressed by the fact that she had taken the time to read about something that I had mentioned in our intake session. When I mentioned that book, she actually took the time to.
That meant a lot to you.
Yeah, that was impressive, and it you know, as far as her therapy, I felt like it didn't have that same sense of emotional safety, maybe, as the others.
Yeah. Now, you described seeing them, 3 consecutive therapists, as opposed to maybe one therapist for 6 times.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference that created for you?
Well, it was interesting that I came away from each one feeling better and more hopeful, but in a very different way. I think probably of all three with Dr. Beck, I felt that I would start feeling better more quickly, that I would start feeling resolution and solution to my problems more quickly. With Dr. Greenberg, I felt that it was, again, it was a safer, a place where I could talk about anything. But with both him and Dr. McWilliams, I felt that that the therapy would end up being a longer process.
Did you see yourself any differently when you were in the sessions with each of these three
Yes.
therapists?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think they all made me see a part of myself that I maybe hadn't been aware of, that that I had more agency, more personal agency than I felt like going in, and that was even after just 1 or 2 sessions.
So there's some hope that you had?
Yes, yes. With all three of them, I felt that.
I see, yeah. And so as you walk away from this experience, can you share with our viewers what you take?
I think that there really is a difference in approaches. Again, something that I think is almost hard to really know until you experience it. And I think that I think that probably any kind of therapy probably can help someone if the therapist is, I think just the act of talking to someone who is non-judgmental and maybe points you in a different direction, whatever their actual approach might be, would be helpful. I also think, though, that it probably is useful for people to think about what actual approach they think would work for them.
So a fit of therapy and client is really important?
I think so. I think so.
Okay. Are there any other final thoughts that you might have for our viewers?
One experience that I had with this was my emotional reaction to having this kind of intensive therapy over a few days like that. I think I had a delayed reaction. For the first 2 weeks afterwards, I didn't think about it. It wasn't. And then about, I want to say about 2 weeks later.
After you'd seen all three therapists?
Yes, after all the taping was done and so on. I had a very strong reaction. It suddenly started to hit me that I had gone through this and opened up to these people, and I had a real sense of anxiety, and that I felt like I needed to have some resolution to that, because everything had been opened up, and now it was just free floating out there, and there was no place for it to go. So that was one thing that I noticed strongly.
So you would have preferred to have just kept going with someone?
I think that would have been helpful. Yeah, I think so. Even if at the time I didn't think so, but then it hit me later. So that was interesting. And I guess I would say just, I mean, not everyone has the luxury of choosing what kind of therapy they and what kind of therapist they choose, or they end up going to. But I think that it can be helpful irrespective of that. Perhaps it might take longer, or it might not seem to be going the way you personally want it to. But I think, yeah.
Just for one, final question that I would have is, when you began this process, you wanted to focus on following through on things, I believe was the term that you used.
Yes.
Any insights into that?
I did find myself using some of the things that we talked about, and thinking about some of the things that we talked about. And I still think that it's a work in progress. But
Aren't we all?
yes,
Yeah.
I think we all are. But yeah, so that was it definitely had a very beneficial effect, I think.
Well, I want to personally thank you for myself as well as for the therapist and our professional community for sharing with us and allowing us to learn by your openness. Thank you so much,
You're
Gigi.
very welcome. It's been very interesting, very enjoyable.